Good evening. Buenas noches. My name is Delia Rodriguez Majuan, and I'm going to be helping to host this event for the Providence School District Facilitations Virtual Session. Mi nombre es Delia Rodriguez Majuan y voy a estar facilitando este Zoom para lo que es el tema de las nuevas construcciones de escuelas. Before we begin, I will start talking about the norms for this meeting. Antes de empezar, vamos a hablar de las normas de la reunión. A ver, vamos a ver un segundito, slideshow. A ver, comienzo. So these are some helpful features, especially for people who are going to be using interpreting features. Estas son las características que son útiles para el Zoom, para aquellas personas que van a estar utilizando intérpretes. The chat feature will not be available, so we please ask you to use the Q&A bubble in the bottom. La función del chat no estará disponible para ustedes, así que le pedimos que utilice la función de preguntas y respuestas que se encuentra en la parte de abajo de la presentación. We will do our best to answer as many questions in the allotted time. Haremos todo lo posible para contestar todas las preguntas dentro del tiempo asignado. In order to use the interpreting features, this is what's important. Estas son las características importantes para utilizar el Zoom y la parte de intérprete. To access interpretation, there's a button that says interpretation in the bottom. If you press that, you can choose the language that you prefer interpreting in. In this case would be Spanish, español. Para escuchar esta presentación en español, marca el globito que está en la parte de abajo de la pantalla que dice interpretación, marca eso y se le abre la cajita que le dice español, aprieta español y eso le va a permitir poder poner, escuchar la presentación en español. If you're joining the meeting from a phone or tablet, you may have to select more to access the language interpretation function. Si usted está usando un celular o una tableta, tal vez tiene que seleccionar donde dice More para seleccionar el botón que le accesa la interpretación. You can write your questions in the Q&A section, and the panelists will respond live or will be provided in the Q&A box. Para hacer preguntas, puede escribir sus preguntas en la sección que dice Q&A, y ahí los panelistas podrán responder en vivo sus preguntas o proporcionar una respuesta en la casilla de preguntas. Voy a dejar de compartir aquí. Y entonces ahora voy a presentarles a Sal Pellegrano, que va a presentarles, les va a hacer la presentación de hoy. So I'm going to introduce right now Sal Pellegrano, who will begin this presentation.
Thank you, Delia. Families, community members, we welcome you to this evening's session. My name is Salvador Pellerano. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Providence Public Schools. Excited to be here with you and joined by Manuel and Zack Scott, Deputy Superintendent of Operations, who will be facilitating today's session. We do have some activities to keep everyone engaged. I will walk through those as those come along. But feel free to send any questions you might have along the way using the Q&A feature. We may stop the presentation to share some of those answers, or we may also share them at the end. Thank you for being here this evening, and I'm going to pass it on to Zack.
Thank you so much, Sal. And just correct me, should I be pulling up the slide deck or are you pulling it up? Whatever's easiest.
Delia will be sharing her screen.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sal. And as Sal mentioned, my name is Zack Scott. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Operations and very excited to be with you today to talk through facilities. It's something we've been speaking with families about for the past few years, both at at the district level, but also with individual school communities. And with the recent bond that was passed by the City of Providence, which provides another $125 million to support school facilities in Providence, we thought it was a kind of a great time to come back and have some district-wide engagement, as we that funding allows us to really think big in terms of facilities and make sure we have a strong plan for the years ahead. So we're excited to today is really to share both some of the context information, the work that's been underway, and some thoughts for the future. But as Sal mentioned, we have some activities that we'll go through to get information from you. And we've had a few of these sessions in person, so we're excited to do this over Zoom as well. But our goal here is to both share information on what's happened to date with facilities, what some thoughts are about what comes next, but then get information from our families and community members as well. So if Delia would transition to the next slide. I just want to kind of frame the big picture when we think about facilities and how it, both the challenge as well as the opportunity that we believe we face in Providence Public Schools. So for those of you who've been in our schools, you know that many of our schools need significant repairs and facilities. So that's due to kind of decades of deferred maintenance. We have over $600 million in needed repairs and upgrades. And that is just to really bring our school buildings back to the kind of what we expect and what we want for all of our students. But over the years, we've taken, what I'd say is a Band-Aid approach to fixing those. And so that's led us to this point where, and we'll look at some data and pictures about what that means. Oop, you can stay there. Thank you. What that means for our facilities, but that is a significant challenge that the district face. The opportunity as we look towards the future is when you think of both funding that had been allocated by the City of Providence in the past few years, as well as this most recent bond funding, pooled together, that brings roughly $500 million or $500 million in facilities and capital work that can be done to our schools. So while it doesn't meet all the needs we mentioned, it gets us a lot further than had been done historically. So we are incredibly thankful for the Mayor, City Council, and City of Providence for allocating this funding, and certainly the community members who voted for it, because we think it provides much needed repairs. So that's the opportunity. And the vision is that allows us to really push for over the next 5 years to moving to far more of our students being in 21st century learning facilities. So when you look at that number today, it's closer to 5%. And we are, obviously we want as many and all of our students in those facilities, but over the next few years, we believe we can get that closer to 50%. So we've got a challenge, but also an opportunity to really bring to life some of what we've committed to in the Turnaround Action Plan, and why we are coming back and continuing the engagement we've had with our families and community members is we want to obviously take and ensure we have community members and families' input into what that long-term vision looks like for the district. So if we transition, and we'll actually do our first activity now, and I will speak slower to make sure our translators can translate appropriately. But if we can just transition to the next slide, we want to give a little warm up on some of the activities that we'll be doing. And so Sal or Manuel, and Sal introduce Manuel, but Manuel will be helping on some of the facilitation here. So Sal or Manuel can walk you through how we'll use these poll questions.
Sure, I'll jump in. Good evening and welcome everybody. Bienvenidos. We know how valuable your time is, and so we really appreciate your coming here this evening. We're going to be sharing a bit of information with you, but also we want to take the opportunity to gather information from you. So we're going to be running a couple of polls through the course of this presentation. It's actually 5 polls. Some of them are open-ended and some of them are multiple choice. Those are just going to pop up in everybody's screen. These questions are kind of focused on some of the areas that we are interested in hearing from you. Certainly, there may be other things that might come up, and please do feel free to put some of that in the question and answer. But certainly do answer these poll questions because they are kind of tailored to some of the areas of focus that we're interested in. As Zach mentioned, our first question is a little bit of a warm-up. So I think, Sal, if we're ready, I think we can launch this and I can speak to it as it pops up. So we're essentially asking each of you to, in short or up to 200 characters, tell us a little bit about what you love most about your school building, or what you wish you could change the most about your school building now. Some of you may be community members, and if you are, please do share either your reflections on your experience in a PPSD school, whether it was a long time ago or recently, or the school is a part of your community. These can be technical things like fixing restrooms and ventilation, but this is also an opportunity to tell us about the things that you dream of for these schools, whether it's an outdoor classroom or an inspiring and secure entry, or a maker space. So I'm going to give you another couple of minutes, and Sal, you can kind of give us a heads up. And for each of these questions, we're going to give you about 3 minutes to provide us your thoughts. Obviously, the multiple choice may be a little bit quicker than that. And then I will speak a little bit to some of the answers as they come through. The multiple choice, we're able to share the results live because of the functionality of Zoom. I'm going to have to distill the open-ended questions, and I'll share some of those answers as we go.
Great, Manuel. We have about 5 responses so far, so excited to see more come through. We'll give them another minute and a half or so.
Perfect.
Since it's our first one, but they're coming in.
Great. I will also take this opportunity and apologize for not doing so earlier to introduce myself. My name is Manuel Cordero. I'm assisting the district in facilitating this engagement, and also looking forward to using this feedback that we're collecting now to inform the planning process that is currently underway. So this is well-timed, and the feedback that you share here will be really useful to the planning team as we move forward. And again, those of you who are just joining us, we're doing a kind of quick poll and asking you to share a little bit about your school building, something that you love about it or something that you would like to change. Again, if you're a community member, please feel free to answer in a way that feels applicable to you.
The poll will be closing in about 25 seconds. So if you're wrapping up your last thoughts there, feel free to submit.
And again, I think many of you have heard this now. We asked this question at the beginning, both as a warm-up, but certainly as we embark on these big changes, we want to make sure that we maintain the things that are working, the things that you love about schools, or the things that are important, and we want to see translated into our newer facilities or the facilities that we're investing in. So I believe, Sal, have we now closed the poll?
We have closed the poll.
Okay,
So we can
great.
continue
So
with the presentation.
great. Thank you. So I guess I'll do a quick reflection actually before we move forward. And again, just sharing quick distillation. We're doing live distillation of some of the feedback. You'll see some of the feedback from the multiple choice questions live. This one is provided to us, so I'm going to share with you. People have reflected that they love how staff greets them, love the students. Somebody says big windows. Separately, somebody says natural light. The small community feeling, somebody's reflection is. These are all the things that people love. The people in the building and the staff. Somebody says celebrations, awards, acknowledgements. The school has a nice grounds. Somebody celebrates the leadership team. Love, somebody calls out their specific school, Nathan Bishop, lots of natural light. Somebody speaks to a new playground that they really love, and large class size murals auditorium, I hear in one of the schools. Things that can be changed or improved. Better structures for student learning, more natural light, less exposed pipes and wires, smaller cafeteria and gym, bathrooms that work consistently. Somebody says traffic can be improved around schools. Ventilation systems can be improved. More space for science labs. Employment and training opportunities for teams in secondary schools. So that's a program that's helpful as well. Secure entries. Somebody says seguridad as well. So in Spanish, somebody has shared security as a priority. Brighter colors and less institutionalized. Let's see, somebody says improvements to a playground at their school. So that's a quick distillation of some of the feedbacks. Thank you all for sharing. That's really useful. And we'll continue. Again, we'll have another one of these polls coming up in a moment. In the meantime, I'll go back to Zack.
Thanks so much, Manuel. And very helpful to hear about what folks love most about their school, as well as their aspirations for the future. So if we turn to the next slide, as I shared, I mentioned the significant need we have across the district for facilities, but we wanted to put both some data to that, as well as in the next few slides, I'll show you some of the pictures we have, which, for those who have been in our schools, will not be a surprise. So when we look at the map here, just to give you a quick overview, this is a map of schools in the district, and the color of the dot reflects the facility condition. And so orange tends to be higher quality facilities in terms of conditions and repairs, and anything towards the dark blue requires significant work. So a few takeaways that you can see from this is, first, that it's, as noted, 27 out of PPSC's 38 schools are rated poor or worse, which means that it's not just an isolated portion of the city that faces these challenges. It's really challenges with facilities across the board. And as noted, given the amount of kind of repair and investments that's been done over the past few years, the estimates are that if we kept on going at the same rate we had previously, that would be roughly 300 years to get our students into high quality classrooms. So obviously a lot of work to do. And again, this is the negative, but we're excited about the opportunity we have with new bond funding. So if I'll walk us kind of briefly through those next few slides, because it's kind of visuals of what that and maybe more visceral reactions to what you saw on the previous slide. So you'll see here both a classroom at Classical High School, as well as a chair in the Hope Auditorium. So these are these are places that we know need significant amounts of repairs. If we look at our next slide, these are classrooms at Gilbert Stewart, one of our middle schools, and Zack Scott Elementary. So obviously we heard some of the concerns or what people want to change. I heard exposed piping and wiring being a clear one. So, you know, some of those challenges you can see in these pictures. So we know we have much to do. So now to transition a little bit to what has happened in the past few years before we look towards the future. But we're excited that through a number of mechanisms, both through the turnaround action plan development, as well as through our school building committee and our sessions we've had with different school communities around buildings, we've been able to gather and take a lot of feedback. So we by no means are starting from scratch, and we'll try to synthesize and summarize what we've heard to date to share with you. We've also seen some improvements over the past few years, and that so we've seen some improvements over the past few years, and we'll highlight some of those that will be completed this year and the following year. So for some of those, you know, to speak to some of those, we've replaced some of the core systems within many of our schools, including boilers. We've implemented bottle filling stations in nearly all of our schools, but we'll be excited to share some of the bigger full-scale school changes that we anticipate happening the rest of this year into next year. We've also been able to start taking advantage of swing space, and we can maybe spend time on this later in the presentation. But swing space is an approach to some of these buildings where, rather than trying to do construction while students are in the building, which can be disruptive, can limit the amount of work that can be done because class is ongoing, to having alternative locations where students can be temporarily relocated so work can be done more deeply and in a more timely fashion at their schools. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's going to be key to some of the facilities work that's coming down the pipeline. The last one is just using district and city resources more effectively. And so a lot of what we've talked about are these large scale capital projects that come through the bond that the city passes. But through a partnership through the district and the city, we've been able to put forward funding that is reimbursed at 90 cents on the dollar, meaning for every dollar the district puts in, we receive 90 cents back to continue doing work. So a one-time investment becomes a multi-year kind of stream of dollars to help support facilities repairs. So that has helped fund those boiler repairs that I mentioned, as well as some of the bottle filling stations. And it allows us to do beyond some of these large scale capital projects we will probably focus on today. It allows us to do some of the other smaller projects that we know our schools need. So if we now look just through, I think it's helpful to get a representative sample of some of the work that is underway and coming up. So if we can look at the next slide. So the first is just a groundbreaking that happened earlier this year at the Narducci Learning Center, formerly the Windmill Elementary School. And this will serve as the swing space that I mentioned for several of our projects. So while that school comes online, Pleasant View Elementary will be able, that we'll talk through as one of our undergoing capital projects underway. We'll be able to relocate to the Windmill School while the work at Pleasant View is done. So it's a temporary relocation that allows us to really do deep renovations at the school with minimal disruption to student learning. Next, and for those of you who attended our event last week, or sorry, 2 weeks ago prior to the break, we were at Hope High School, and we're excited about some of the work underway at Hope High School. So what you see here is the auditorium. That work is underway, and we anticipate a completion for the auditorium in the spring of this year. If we look at the next slide, you'll see the entryway, and this is nearly finished, and actually where we held our engagement session to show some of the work that had been completed. This is the entryway that is stunning right now, and we know it'll look better once that full project is complete. But this one has been underway and is exciting. You know, we are excited to see once the full project is complete. The next one is Classical High School, and this work has been, I know, underway for quite some time, but we've had through it a change in contractor. Are excited about that work restarting and moving forward quickly. So here you see a rendering, and I believe this might be of either the library or common space, but it gives you a sense of some of the different school layouts, the light that we heard so much as a priority. as well as some of the alternative structures and setups for student learning. The next slide is the new Spaziano Elementary School, and we are excited. This was unfortunately the facility that formerly inhabited these grounds was the lowest rated in terms of facilities quality, the lowest rated facility in the state, and was therefore prioritized as one of the first projects under the capital plan. So we are excited that school will be open at the start of next school year in fall of 2023 as one of the kind of first major comprehensive rebuilds as part of this capital plan. So we are excited that is just around the corner. And similarly, we have William DeBate Elementary School, also with an anticipated completion date of next fall, which is exciting and is coming up soon. Also a school that we leveraged swing space for, so the students at DeBate were temporarily relocated, so we could do that work over the course of the year, whereas sometimes that work without that relocation can take years and years. So we're very excited about both the new Spaziano building and new DeBate building starting next school year. So I'll kick it to Manuel for the next question, but wanting to now, hopefully some of these images and things have piqued your interest on beyond kind of what you aspire to in your school. So I'll let Manuel help us here.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Sorry, Zach. So the next question is to start to think ahead. We asked you about some of what you love and what you would change in your schools, and now we're kind of asking you, what are the things that you might prioritize? And some of the elements that you'll see here are elements that are already being integrated into some of the projects that Zach just walked through. So these are things that we have already heard are priorities for our community members and for our schools. But we want to give another opportunity to see what you would prioritize at your school, or as we ask here, what would you be most excited to see at every school? So Sal will launch this. This one is a multiple choice, so we're asking you to choose one of these. It's not to say that you would only get one of these, but it gives us a sense of what we are prioritizing as a community. I will also say that this is not a limiting list. So if you feel like there's something that's not represented here, we welcome hearing that as well. And you can certainly use the Q&A to share other ideas of what you might prioritize, but still please do respond to the poll. Sal?
Manuel, this is a multiple choice question, so they can choose one or more.
Excellent. There you go.
So if you're inclined to selecting more than one, please do so. And I will open the poll right this minute, and we'll give folks 3 minutes.
I'll speak a little bit to some of these categories just for context. We have heard in previous sessions and throughout other engagement the importance of outdoor space, and certainly that has become incredibly apparent during COVID. As we've been forced to think really creatively about learning environments. So that's reflected in those first two items. We also know that arts and our performance spaces are a critical part of our education, but also their community spaces. So you saw some of those investments a moment ago. As we think about our schools as a part of our community at large, we understand that making that connection has a kind of spatial component, and the community room or family room is as a space that can help kind of create that place for meetings to happen with family members, but also the community at large. The flexible common spaces is something that we've heard, and both from community members and teachers, and it's just that type of space that allows for collaborative activities and collaborative learning, which is so important to 21st century education. Speaking of important elements, SEL spaces, social emotional learning, we know is such a critical component. So having spaces where students can feel comfortable both seeking counseling, but also even just having a mindful moment. I spoke to creative spaces a moment ago, and what better expression of that than maker spaces. And then to round out the kind of mix, we've included on-site health clinic to address the other components of health.
Manuel, I'll say that this was a popular question. We have about 30 seconds left, and we have just over 70% participation. So that's exciting to see.
Excellent. So if you haven't already, you can pick your choice or choices, and we'll be able to look at the results in a moment.
We have about 10 seconds left. And I'm going to share results.
All right, excellent. So hopefully you all can see the same thing that I'm seeing, but if you can't, I will briefly summarize. We have about 54% of respondents, that's 19 respondents, saying outdoor space is a priority. 10 participants, or 29%, prioritized outdoor classrooms. 10 or 29% prioritized dedicated performance space, such as an auditorium. 9 of you, or 26%, prioritized a family or community room. 12 of you prioritized flexible common space, that's about 34%. 13 of you, or 37%, prioritized counseling or calm down spaces. 60%, or 21 of 35 participants, prioritized the makerspace. So that looks like one of our higher priorities. And then finally, on-site health clinic received 12 votes, which is 34%. So looks like makerspace and outdoor space are 2 of the most prioritized, but there's a good mix, which hopefully indicates that we're thinking about the right elements. Again, the list was not intended to be limiting, so if you have other thoughts for elements that we should be considering, please do feel free to add them in the question and answer. So we will continue with the presentation, and we'll be back in a moment with another poll question.
Thank you so much, Manuel. So if we transition to the next slide, we started off by talking about some of the current state of our facilities. We've highlighted some of the work that is underway right now, and now we want to transition a little bit to looking ahead. And so when we started this presentation, we talked about the opportunity to move to a place where we have far more of our facilities in a kind of like new facility. And so that is the great opportunity that we have. But we want to do that, any planning, in a data-driven way. And so you obviously want to be looking at everything when you're making these decisions, but a few of those that come to mind are the quality of your facilities and data on your facilities, which we shared earlier in this presentation. And we know there's significant need across the district, and that the funds will allow us to make a significant impact in many of our schools, but not all. And so we need to use data both on facilities as well as enrollment, forward looking to knowing how our enrollment is projected and how it's gone over the past few years will help us make those decisions. And then lastly, family and community engagement. So to me, those are really the 3 prongs for how we think about making some of these decisions. And so again, I'll talk through briefly some of the enrollment data. I'll also then share some of what we've heard so far from families that relate to facilities and how we're trying to hope these sessions we're having today and over the next few weeks will build upon it. So to touch on enrollment briefly, like many districts, PPSD has seen, if we transition to the next slide, we have seen some declines over the past few years, and I won't go through all the details here, but particularly during the pandemic, districts and states across the nation. So if you look at both kind of neighboring urban districts like Boston or Worcester or Springfield, have seen some declines, but even within the state of Rhode Island, we've seen some significant declines. Some of that has been both due to the impact of COVID, as well as just some demographic changes. So you'll see, again, I won't go through each of these circumstances, but it's suffice it to say that Rhode Island and Providence are not necessarily unique here. So if we look to the next slide, as we project ahead based on those changes, we may see as a district 3% annual declines in enrollment, which is something is a challenge, but by being able to plan for it, along with having this, the funding to support school investments, we can make sure we're doing those investments in a smart way as we look and plan ahead. So if we look at the next slide, we wanted to highlight some of the feedback we've heard so far from families, because that helps, as Manuel mentioned, we want to hear throughout this presentation your feedback generally, but there are a few areas where we want more targeted feedback to build on what we've heard from families so far. So a few things that I'll highlight, both from the turnaround action plan. So that was the plan that was developed at the start of the state intervention to hear from families, community members, faculty, students, to have a plan to help transform Providence Public Schools. And it was all kind of a comprehensive plan. So it was not just about facilities, but facilities certainly were touched on. But also beyond that, we've had in community engagement, both in sessions like these, as well as individual school sessions, as well as conversations with our school building committee members, which include community members, as well as principals and other members of our broader PPSD community. So a few things that we've heard. The first is, and I'll start from the bottom actually, is a desire to increase the number of 4-year-olds enrolled in high quality pre-kindergarten. We know that has a tremendous impact for student learning. There's a significant amount of research that highlights the importance of pre-K. And we know how important it is to our families. And so that was one of our goals in the turnaround action plan, was to increase pre-kindergarten. The other goal is a little broad, but certainly very important, which was increasing the percentage of students who feel a sense of belonging at their school. And we know one of the things we heard when reflecting on the earlier feedback from the presentation was, those things that people love the most about their schools are being greeted by faculty members. So that sense of belonging is important, not just because it feels good, but because we know it has a direct impact on student learning. And one of the things we've heard is middle schools can be a challenging point in any child's kind of life or in their school journey. And so parents have asked, how can we think differently about the middle school experience? Because that's where, challenges from working at the elementary school and wanting to think through how we can continue and build that sense of belonging beyond and through middle school. And so that has led us to think, how might we think about the middle school experience differently? How can we move faster on in facilities, knowing that we have a lot of need, but also how do we make closer connections with our families and parents? So if we look towards the next slide, what that has led us to is a few key themes that guide what we think of next in our facilities planning efforts and where we'll want to get more feedback from you. So first is, newer buildings, which is pretty straightforward, and we've gotten some great feedback from you all on that previous poll about what is critical to have in every building. So that is feedback we want to continue to hear, so we ensure we're prioritizing the right things. The next is I'll spend a little bit of time talking about it because it's, I think, one thing we are excited about and also want feedback on is expanding the number of K-8 options as an alternative to middle schools. So We know that for the most part in Providence Public Schools, we have elementary schools that run from kindergarten through 5th grade. We have middle schools that run 6th through 8th grade. And then we have high schools that run 9th through 12th grade. And there's research to show that if done well, that a school that is actually starts from kindergarten and goes through 8th grade can have a positive impact on student learning, in part because there are less transitions for students throughout their academic career, and they're able to stay with the same cohort of students, as well as the same staff and family members. So that is something we've seen nationally, both research on as well as districts strongly considering, and that is something we're excited about exploring with you all. And then the other kind of key prong is wanting to expand pre-kindergarten access, again, knowing that is extremely important for families and has a significant amount of research showing the impact it can have on student learning. So with that, it'll actually bring us to our next poll, which talks about pre-kindergarten and thinking through, and I'll frame it a little bit before I turn it over to Manuel, is as you think of pre-kindergarten, there's a number of different ways you can think about how you expand pre-kindergarten, whether it's through, do you want to prioritize it being closer to home? Do you want one location where all the pre-kindergarten is housed because it allows you to support those students differently? But I'll turn it over to Manuel, but here we're interested in getting your feedback as we think of pre-kindergarten expansion. What in your mind are the kind of key priorities that the district should consider?
Thank you, Scott, and sorry, Zach, and you set that up really well. So I won't add too much more to say, except that this is actually a single choice question. So as you look at it, we are asking you to prioritize the one element that you would like us to prioritize as we think about expanding access to pre-K. Again, it gives you a series of options from proximity to home to programming, specialized services, keeping kids in the same school as their siblings, creating a kind of early childhood center, or prioritizing full or half-day programming. Just as a heads up, we're going to do this as a choice question, and then we're going to follow up with a couple of questions about the pre-K-8. So we're going to have a sequence of 3 questions that we're going to ask you, but we'll start with this one right now. And Sal, you can launch the pre-K question. So you should all be able to see the pre-K question now. As a reminder, anybody who has joined us a little bit later, we are asking for feedback as we go along through the presentation. And the feedback that we're asking is targeted around areas of focus. The plan, as mentioned by Zach a moment ago, is focused, among other things, on the expansion of access to pre-K. So we have a question here that will help inform the planning team and their decision-making around pre-K. What are the things that should be prioritized, or what are your priorities as you think about pre-K access? Again, this may be something that applies directly to you as a parent of a young one, or it might be something that you're drawing from your expertise from a few years back. But either way, please share your thoughts. All right, looks like we have a pretty good response rate so far. Maybe we'll give it another few seconds. Sal, what do you think?
Let's just give it another 15 seconds. We got about 30 responses.
Excellent. So yeah, keep the answers coming in. Again, this is a single choice. Similar to the previous question, the choices that you're seeing are based on feedback that we have already received and some of the priorities that have already been identified. If there is something that feels like it's missing from this list, feel free to share it with us, and you can use the Q&A function to share any other areas of priority that might be considered.
All right, Manuel, I see the last couple of responses coming in, so we'll just give it another 5 seconds and I will close the poll.
So it looks like we now have the results, and hopefully most of you can see them. If you can't, I will quickly summarize the results that we're seeing. Again, we asked the question of, when you're thinking about expanding access to pre-K, what is your top priority? Proximity to home got 3 answers. That was 10% of the 30. Programming, meaning dual language or bilingual programming, got 4 out of the 30, that's 13%. Specialized service for differently abled students also got 4 responses and 13%. Same school as older siblings got 6 responses and 20%. An early childhood center got 2 responses and 7%. Full day programming got 11 responses and 37%, and half day programming got 0 responses. So our top 2 vote getting answers are full day programming with 37% and same school as older sibling with 20%. And then the next 2 with 13% are programming and specialized services. So thank you everybody who participated, really useful feedback. And with that, we're going to actually move on to our next question. So we have 2 questions coming up about pre-K 8. And again, you might all remember that Zack framed the question of pre-K 8 both around the issue of middle school and the transformation of middle school, but also the connection to elementary schools. The first poll question that we're going to open is, what are you most excited about when it comes to pre-K 8 school models? What are the things that that seem positive and good about the pre-K 8 school models? And I will let Sal launch that poll. For those of you that may be thinking, well, I actually have some questions about the pre-K 8. We also welcome those questions. Please feel free to use the question and answer to fill that out. If you actually foresee that there might be challenges, don't worry. We are asking that question next. That is the next question. So if you have something that you'd like to share in terms of possible challenges, just hold on to that for a moment and we'll ask that next. But in the meantime, tell us about the things that you think might be positive in terms of the implementation of pre-K 8 schools in the Providence Public School District. And because this is a long form answer, we will take a moment to allow everybody the time to fill it in.
Yes, Manuel, let's give folks another couple of minutes.
Again, those of you who are joining us, we are sharing, we are asking poll questions over the course of the meeting. in alignment with some of the themes of the presentation to get feedback in focus areas. And right now we are asking about pre-K 8 as one of the grade configuration and focus areas of the planning.
Give another 20 seconds or so.
So we're gonna close this question in a moment and transition to the next question around pre-K 8. I will, as you will recall, as we did early on, I will offer a quick distillation, but we'll move on to the next question, and then I will share the feedback from both questions together. So on the next slide, we have the next question, which I previewed a moment ago, which are what are the challenges or what are the questions and concerns that you have about pre-K 8 school models? Again, thinking about in the implementation of a pre-K 8 in the Providence Public School District, what are your questions and concerns?
Well, and that has been launched.
Okay, so we are currently asking the question about questions and concerns that you have about pre-K 8 school models. We'll give you another moment to finish your thoughts and edit into the poll answer box. I am, in the meantime, gathering the answers to both of the questions, and I'll share a quick distillation about some of the positives, questions, and concerns that have emerged. Okay, so Sal, how much time do you think?
We have about 30 more seconds to wrap up the second question.
Perfect. Again, I want to thank you all who have taken the time, both with the multiple choice, single choice, but those of you who are providing the feedback in the field, I can already see some of the feedback. It's thoughtful and incredibly useful. So we thank you both for taking the time to be here, but also providing your thoughts.
Okay, Manuel, the poll has closed.
Okay, so thank you, Sal. So I will start to share with you some of the feedback we heard on the first question. As a reminder, the first question was about what excited you about the pre-K 8 model. As we look at some of the answers that we hear, not having a transition and siblings in the same school for longer. Feeling like my family can invest ourselves in a long-term community, healthier and safe environment for children, great idea, leadership opportunities for middle school students, ability to stay with siblings and administrators they become familiar with. We are excited about an environment that encourages our daughter to grow, a place that's safe and welcoming. Having seen this in New Haven, I love the idea of the range of ages of kids in schools. I like that they'd be able to stay with staff that they have known for years as they try to navigate the middle school years, which can be rough. Somebody answered simply, great. Fewer transition complications for students and families, opportunities to share resources in a larger school campus, special attention paid to specific social and emotional needs of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, those in between little and big kids. I feel like we're not paying a ton of attention to that age. Opportunities for staff and admin to collaborate, creating community. Somebody says in Spanish, more emphasis on comprehensive reading. Emotional aspect for students will be better, and the fact that students can stay in an environment that they're comfortable with. Somebody speaks to the possibility of combining pre-K with an expansion of classical high school with a test entry at middle school. Transitions are hard. It would be convenient for families and students to attend the same school that runs pre-K through 8 and student curriculum for the year, students curriculum for the year with tutoring and assistance available would be helpful. So that actually captures, I went through every single answer to that first one. I think somebody added one in the chat as well. I'll try to pull that up while I also pull up the answers to the next question, which was about the challenges about pre-K 8. And give me one quick moment to pull those up. Okay. Thank you kindly for all of your patience. Okay, so now I'm going to cover the questions regarding concerns or questions about the pre-K-8 model. Somebody asks, what will be done with the unused middle schools? Somebody states, too large, too many kids, priorities might get lost. Implementation may be tricky with something new. But for families where there are siblings in different grades, I think it's a welcome change. Somebody asked about the lack of space for restrooms for questioning children as part of the SEL space model. So they say, not sure. Kids stuck in a poor or distant school for a long time. Younger and older kids mixing, that might be hard. Possibility of violence. So making age-appropriate smaller groupings. What model of education will be used for pre-K-8? So that one's a question. Somebody asked about the amount of kids in one school. Somebody asked about the devil's in the details, what buildings would be used. So where is this actually being implemented? I have a couple that ask about a couple in a row asking about sense of security, age differences, emotional development, possibility of physical separation, meaning early childhood wing, elementary, middle. Somebody expresses the concern about the special education. These children sometimes are ignored. So how do we center decisions on those? Somebody else asked about the concern about kids getting lost. So making sure, sorry, I'm also translating some of these, so I apologize for the delay. Someone expresses an interest in schools that are divided by age. So the younger students with the younger students and older students with the older students. Somebody also is asking about the implementation of a program dealing with emissions, and I think maybe the issue of environmental, so environmental sciences in the curriculum. I believe, if I'm wrong about that, somebody can add it into the question and answer. So I think I captured both almost every response and all the themes, certainly. So thank you again all for the thoughtful feedback, both on the challenges, but also on the opportunities. Some great feedback there, both on the pre-K side, but also the pre-K-8 side. And with that, I'll throw it back to Zach.
Thanks, Manuel. And before I close it out, I do want to reflect a little bit on the feedback that we heard, because it's good to hear. It's exciting to know people see the promise of pre-K-8, but I think, as one of the comments said, the devil is in the details, and we want to make sure we do it in a thoughtful and planful way. And so a few of the things that I heard are obviously being, making sure we think of how the physical space is laid out, particularly when you have different age students in one location. So that is certainly something that, it certainly connects directly with some of the facilities planning and how you actually lay out, whether it's a redesigned building or a new building, to make sure we address and hear some of those concerns. Security, I think that is something we've heard consistently for all of our students at all of our schools currently, but certainly as you do any transition, you want to make sure you are thoughtful in that. The other thing we've heard in other sessions when we hear about implementation is support for staff and how they are now transitioning to a new type of model, making sure there's appropriate amounts of staff in the right areas, and that also students are prepared for that transition, because that is, even if they are staying in the same building, as you matriculate through your academic career, making sure students are prepared for what might be a new school learning environment. So that is all incredibly helpful feedback, and frankly consistent with what we've heard. So I'm excited to know people are both interested, excited about the possibility, but have good questions about how we implement. So that's one of the benefits we have as we plan ahead, that we can do some of this in a thoughtful way, so we address some of those concerns and questions that families had. So why don't we transition to, we have another slide or two more, and then I know we've been answering questions as they come out through the chat, but we probably have some time at the end to get some other question and answer questions, just generic questions answered. And as Sal mentioned, there may be some we'll answer today, and there may be others we'll have to kind of huddle on and share back afterwards, as some of them are a little more complicated. But as we look ahead, I think we've been able to, again, build on some of the feedback we've heard to date. But at the time we start making either recommendations or decisions about the broader plan ahead, we will do those as transparently and openly with the community as we will. We know, again, some of the key building blocks and key themes and ideas are around that pre-K expansion and the K-8 growth. And so as we, those turn from kind of broad plan ideas into more concrete plans, bringing that back to our students, families, and faculty is incredibly important. Again, we'll continue to rely on the data that comes to us on both enrollment and facilities, as well as the feedback we get from our community members, as we know that helps shape that plan moving forward. So just to mention about kind of what comes next is we are continuing to have these sessions through the month of December. If there are any kind of proposed changes or plans, as we are excited about this incoming bond funding, we will share those with our communities, and then actually move towards the next stage, which is they call it stage 1, but that is putting more concrete pen to paper on what the future plan is. So we're excited about the work that's underway, but no, we want to start pretty soon on connecting the more recent funding in, so that we have a kind of cohesive long-term capital plan. So the last thing I mentioned is we'd ask that you keep, and you keep checking in on the PPSD website, rebuildpvdschools.com, which you can see the link on the next slide. There we'll post some of our information, some of the presentations, and I don't know if we have the exact information tonight, but if not, we'll be sharing it soon. That will have over the next few weekends some ability to go and visit schools and other neighboring communities that have recently had major capital work done. So beyond what you can see on a PowerPoint, that you can come in person and see some of the new schools that have been done in neighboring cities. And we'll see next year in PPSD when a few new schools are online. But I'll speak for myself in saying, when you actually go to those new facilities, it is different than just hearing about it or seeing it on a computer screen. So we'll send that information and post it on the website, because we are excited about inviting many of you to see those other facilities.
And so Zach, I can just,
go ahead, Sal, please.
I can just add a couple of details regarding that. I know for folks who are here to save the date, it'll be December 10th and December 17th. So more details to come there on the exact timing, location. We will be providing some transportation for families who will need transportation. So we'll share more there, but I just wanted folks to have those dates. Again, December 10th and December 17th. We do have a question in the chat, Zach, that I think you may be able to answer. What is the timeline for implementing pre-K-8 model if it moves forward?
Yeah, so I would say there are a couple ways I'd answer that. The first is we highlighted one of the projects earlier, which was the Spaziano Elementary School. There was also in the prior round of bond funding and approval for a 6 through 8 portion of Spaziano. So essentially a Spaziano Middle School that would make that, it's on 2 separate sites, but would be one continuous K-8 on the Spaziano campus. So that is one that is moving forward. In terms of the other ones, like the aspirational what might lie ahead, that would come through a master plan for facilities that would be submitted along with our application for the specific use of the recent bond funding. So Spaziano Middle School will be happening, but the other ones would take several years to both design, plan, and build. So that would likely be not a next school year thing, and perhaps not the school year after, but we're hoping shortly thereafter, given the need to do the facilities work to make that happen.
We had another participant put in a plug for art space, which is much needed at many of our schools. So I've captured that as well as part of the data map.
Thank you. And we are certainly excited, particularly at Hope, the major investment we have in our auditorium there and for performing arts. But I hear and see the question that it's, that is something that, we aspire to have at all of our schools and having that type of space. So that is feedback well taken.
No additional questions at this moment in time in the chat or the Q&A.
Okay. We'll see if any more come through, but again, I would certainly. So while Sal, it looks like a few more questions are coming. One, I do just want to plug, in addition to going to the website that was put in the chat. When you're there, please do put it asks you for your email address to sign up for the email listserv, because that will allow us to, when we have some of those details on school visits and otherwise, we will share that with people who have signed up. So there were two questions that came through. The first were, what elementary schools are targeted to become part of the K-8? So the short answer is that there's not a specific plan or list at this point of those schools. Part of that is what we want to do is take both feedback we get from the community on what is important, both in terms of the physical space of a K-8 building, but also the questions we asked earlier about what are you excited about or what are your concerns about, so that we can plan accordingly. Once we take that with some of the facilities and enrollment data, that helps us understand what facilities are best positioned to make that transition, what part of the city or areas where we have the highest number of students. So there is not a list of what those schools are, but we hope to make that kind of a starting recommendation in the next few months, so that we again use that data wisely in determining where it makes sense, because there are some facilities or some plots of land where those facilities are that aren't conducive to K-8, because either they aren't big enough, they may not have the green space that we know is important, whatever it may be. And so this feedback here is helpful to shape where we, what types of schools we prioritize. The second question was, what will Providence do to prevent mishaps in a new functioning school like Pawtucket's issue earlier this school year? So if I recall, unless the question is about a different incident, there were some challenges with the school opening on time because of some of the challenges around the facilities. So, part of that is just doing thoughtful planning and making sure that, again, the benefits of doing a multi-year plan is you can project ahead 3 or 4 years. And that doesn't mean that there aren't unforeseen circumstances that come up that might impact your timeline or your schedule. But by planning out for multiple years, you can ensure that things aren't being done at the last minute. So that is, our commitment to ensure that our projects stay on track. And while I don't know the specifics about the Pawtucket incident, I do know there have been challenges generally in the facilities and construction world, given delays in material availability and other things since the pandemic. So it's not to say it's easy, but that is something that a multi-year plan helps with, is that it allows us to plan for any, both the foreseen and unforeseen circumstances.
It seems to be the end of our Q&A. So I just like to take a moment to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule and engaging with us in this topic. I think the feedback was extremely helpful for us as we continue this planning. Two quick things before we transition. Again, save the date on those dates if you would like to tour the new facilities, December 10th, December 17th. We will share more information and details with everyone. And do not forget to visit the rebuildpvdschools.com to sign up for additional updates, future information. We will also be posting this recorded webinar there if folks would like to review at a later time, and for families who did not have the opportunity to join today. So thank you everyone for joining and taking time out of your evening.
Thank you very much. Again, on my part, thanking everybody, thanking the presenters, thanking the interpreters, thanking you, the community for joining us tonight. There will be another presentation this Thursday, so we'll be sending out more information. And hope you can tell your friends, your community members, and others about these presentations. And if you're interested in signing up for the visits, make sure that you sign up in our website so we can let you know, and join us at these visits in the other towns where new schools have been built. So I'll let you go on for the rest of the evening. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon again. Thank you.